Welcome to the California Department of Social Services May 2022 training, Feeding Infants in the Child and Adult Care Food Program, or CACFP. I am Stephanie Salazar, Nutrition Education Consultant in the CACFP branch at the California Department of Social Services, or CDSS. Here is an overview of what we will cover today. The infant meal pattern, introducing solid foods to infants, creditable foods for infants, benefits of breastfeeding and how you can support breastfeeding mothers, as well as the importance of infant formula and what types of infant formulas are creditable, and documenting infant meals. The learning objectives for this training are to have a basic understanding of the infant meal pattern, identify creditable foods for infants, recognize benefits of breastfeeding and how to support breastfeeding mothers, and determine creditable infant formulas. Additional learning objectives are to understand the developmental readiness signs for infants starting on solid foods, and understand the documentation requirements for the infant meal pattern. The USDA Feeding Infants Guide was updated in 2019 with the most up-to-date infant feeding guidelines. The guide includes best practices for infant feeding as well as information on the CACFP infant meal pattern, developmental readiness for solid foods, hunger and fullness signs, handling and storing breast milk and infant formula, and creditable foods. It is available for download, or you can order a hard copy from the USDA Team Nutrition. Let's first take a look at the infant meal pattern. The infant meal pattern reflects the American Academy of Pediatrics, or AAP, recommendations for infant feeding based upon the latest scientific research from the National Academy of Medicine, formerly the Institute of Medicine. Infant feeding experts have significantly changed their guidance as to when solid foods should be introduced to infants and which foods can be served. This is reflected in the infant meal pattern. The infant meal pattern has only two age groups. The first age group is from birth through the end of 5 months, and the second age group is 6 months through the end of 11 months. The only required components for the birth through 5 months age group are breast milk or iron-fortified infant formula. This is for breakfast, lunch, and snacks, and the minimum serving size is 4 to 6 fluid ounces. Breastfed infants who regularly consume less than the minimum amount of breast milk per feeding may be offered less than the minimum amount of breast milk noted in the meal pattern if additional breast milk is offered at a later time. Please note that this is not the same for formula. The minimum amount of formula must always be offered to infants at meals and snacks in order to claim reimbursement. Also, please note that centers and homes can get reimbursed for a meal when a mother breastfeeds her infant on site at the center or home. Let's review the requirements for the 6 through 11-month age group. First, we will focus on when to introduce solid foods. We will talk about what foods to introduce and how much to introduce in a few minutes. When to start solids is really dependent on when the child is developmentally ready. According to the AAP, most infants are ready to begin solids at about 6 months of age. An infant might be ready before or after 6 months, but typically most infants are ready around 6 months of age. That is why the USDA provides flexibility for when solid foods are introduced. According to the AAP, 6 to 8 months of age is often referred to as a critical window for initiating the introduction of solid foods to infants. In addition, the AAP states that 7 to 8 months of age, infants should be consuming solid foods from all food groups. Let's talk about developmental readiness signs now. Here are guidelines from the AAP for determining when an infant is developmentally ready to start solid foods. They sit in a high chair or feeding seat with good head control. They open their mouth when food comes their way. They move food from a spoon into their throat instead of pushing the food back out of the mouth. They have doubled their birth weight, and they may watch others eat, reach for food, and seem eager to be fed. Providers should be in constant communication with an infant's parent or guardian to determine when an infant is developmentally ready for solid foods. It might be helpful to review the guidelines for assessing when an infant is developmentally ready for solid foods with the parents. This is a best practice, not required. If there is a disagreement between the provider and the parent or guardian, the provider should comply with the parent or guardian's request. As another best practice, the USDA recommends that parent or guardians request in writing when a center or home should start serving solid foods to their infant. There is a sample handout you could use from the Feeding Infants Guide called, "Have you already started giving your baby solid foods? Let us know." You can also create your own document for parents to let your agency know when they would like their infant to start solid foods and which foods can be offered. We talked a lot about when solid food should be started, but now let's look at the components that are on the meal pattern. The required components are serving sizes for the 6 through 11 months age group are 6 to 8 fluid ounces of breast milk or iron-fortified infant formula, 0 to ½ ounce equivalent infant cereal and or 0 to 4 tablespoons of meat, poultry, fish, eggs, cooked dry beans or peas, or 0 to 2 ounces cheese, or 0 to 4 ounces cottage cheese, or 0 to 4 ounces or ½ a cup of yogurt, and 0 to 2 tablespoons vegetables or fruit, or a combination of both. Notice that the serving size starts with 0. That gives flexibility for you to not serve a component if a child is not developmentally ready at 6 months of age to begin consuming solid foods. Or if an infant is taking solid foods but has just started, this is a good way for you to gradually introduce the solids. Let's look at the snack meal pattern. The required components and serving sizes for the 6 through 11 month age group for snack are 2 to 4 fluid ounces of breast milk or iron-fortified infant formula, a grain item from the following: 0 to ½ ounce equivalent bread, 0 to ½ ounce equivalent crackers, 0 to ½ ounce equivalent infant cereal, or 0 to 1/4 ounce equivalent ready-to-eat breakfast cereals. The USDA also allows any grains in Exhibit A, Group B that are developmentally appropriate for an infant to be offered, and 0 to 2 tablespoons of vegetables or fruit, or a combination of both. Crediting grains as ounce equivalents is also required to ensure infants are offered sufficient amounts of grains. This requirement was effective October 1, 2021, unless the CACIP operator has an approved CACIP meal pattern waiver through June 30, 2022, to delay crediting grains as ounce equivalents. Solid foods should be gradually introduced to infants. Therefore, not all infants who are consuming solids will be ready to receive both the grains and vegetable fruit components on the meal pattern. Let's take a closer look at what this means. Foods should be introduced to infants gradually. This means that new foods should be introduced one at a time over the course of a few days to make sure the infant is tolerating the food and there are no allergic reactions present. If they have just started consuming solids, then they won't be taking all the food components on the meal pattern, which is okay, and those meals would still be reimbursable. Solid foods served to infants must be of a texture and consistency that is appropriate for the age and development of the infant being fed. This is also important to discuss with the parents. USDA recommends to start by offering pureed solid foods and move to foods mashed by a fork, ground, or finely chopped. Cut foods to no more than 1/2 inch size or cut into thin slices that can easily be chewed to avoid choking once the infant is ready for other textures besides purees. There is also no specific order of which solid foods to offer first. It could be a vegetable, a fruit, a food item from the meat alternate component, or infant cereal. There is no scientific evidence that supports offering one food item over another. The infant meal pattern also includes sugar limit requirements for yogurt and ready-to-eat breakfast cereals. Yogurt served cannot contain more than 23 grams of total sugar per 6 ounce. Ready-to-eat breakfast cereals, which are dry cereals in a box, such as Chex or Cheerios, also have a sugar limit requirement. They cannot contain more than 6 grams of total sugar per dry ounce. Now I would like to go through a list of creditable foods for each of the solid food components of the infant meal pattern, starting with meat alternates. Creditable meat alternate items that can be offered to infants are meat and poultry, fish, pasteurized cheeses, whole eggs, cooked dry beans and peas, cottage cheese or yogurt, or a combination of any of these food items. Notice that whole eggs are now allowable. Previously, only egg yolks were allowed due to concerns with developing food allergies when infants are exposed to the protein in the egg white. However, the AAP recently concluded there is no convincing evidence to delay the introduction of solid foods that are considered to be major food allergens, including eggs. Please note that if you do serve eggs, you must serve both the egg white and the egg yolk in order for that component to be creditable. Although processed meats such as hot dogs, infant meat and poultry sticks, chicken nuggets, sausage, fish sticks are all creditable, they are not recommended to be served to infants due to their high sodium content. Also, some forms of these foods are choking hazards for infants. Let's move on to creditable grains in the infant meal pattern. Dry iron-fortified infant cereal is a creditable grain once the infant is developmentally ready for solid foods. Both single-grain infant cereal, such as wheat, oat, and barley, as well as mixed-grain infant cereal are creditable as long as they are iron-fortified. As long as one of the ingredients is listed as iron, ferric fumarate, electrolytic iron, or iron electrolytic, then the cereal is iron-fortified. Ready-to-eat cereals, which include flakes, rounds, and O-shaped cereals that older babies can pick up and eat, are also creditable. Please note that these cereals can only credit towards snacks, not meals. As I previously mentioned, ready-to-eat cereals also have a sugar limit of no more than 6 grams per dry ounce. All grains served must be made with enriched or whole grain meal or flour to be creditable. As mentioned earlier, for snack only, any grain that is listed in Exhibit A, Group B is creditable as well. Some of the items listed in Group B include bagels, English muffins, tortillas, and pita bread. Exhibit A shows grain requirements for the child nutrition programs and is located in the USDA Food Buying Guide. Creditable fruits and vegetables. All fruits and vegetables can be offered to infants, but as mentioned earlier, you should cut foods to no more than 1/2 inch size or cut into thin slices that can easily be chewed to avoid choking. This goes for all foods offered to infants, not just fruits and vegetables. Keep in mind that you should also remove skins, seeds, pits, and peels before serving to decrease the risk for choking. Fruit and vegetable juices, even if they are 100% fruit or vegetable juice, are not creditable in the infant meal pattern, therefore cannot be served to infants as part of a reimbursable meal. Commercially prepared baby foods can be purchased as baby food pouches or jars, and both are creditable. If the baby food contains multiple food items from one food component, for example, a baby food that contains pears, kale, and spinach, then you would not need further documentation to show how much of each food was in that baby food container, since pears, kale, and spinach are all from the same food component. Combination commercially prepared baby foods are a mixture of 2 or more foods, such as meats and vegetables, and may need further documentation to show the amounts of each food component in each container. For example, if a combination commercially prepared baby food contained chicken and green beans, and the packaging does not indicate the amount for each food, then further documentation would be needed. That would be a product formulation statement, unless this information could be found on the manufacturer's website. For additional information, please view the USDA resource Crediting Store-Bought Combination Baby Foods in the CACFP. Before we move on to the next section, here is a list of foods that are not creditable in the infant meal pattern. Tofu, cheese food, cheese spread, and cheese product, nuts, seeds, peanut butter, and other nut or seed butters, soy yogurt, yogurt products such as frozen yogurt, drinkable or liquid yogurt products, yogurt smoothies, homemade yogurt, yogurt-flavored products, yogurt bars, and freeze-dried yogurt snacks. Honey, including store-bought foods made with honey, such as graham crackers or cereals, and desserts such as cookies, sweet pie crust, donuts, cereal bars, breakfast bars, granola bars, sweet rolls, toaster pastries, cake, and brownies, including baby food varieties of these items, and juice. Now that we have reviewed the meal pattern, let's talk about breastfeeding and formula feeding infants, since breast milk and formula are the most important sources of nutrition for an infant's first year of life. There are many benefits to breastfeeding for both mom and baby. Breast milk is made perfectly for each baby. It has the right mix of nutrients that he or she needs to grow and stay healthy. It contains live substances that protect babies from getting sick. It is easy for babies to digest. Babies taste different flavors in breast milk based on what the mother eats. This may help a baby accept new flavors from solid foods later on. It is economical, and it provides an opportunity for mothers to bond with their babies. A best practice to support breastfeeding mothers is to offer a quiet, clean, comfortable place for them to breastfeed their infants. Breast milk storage. Bottles of breast milk must be labeled with the infant's full name and the date that the milk was pumped. You should ask the parents to do this prior to storing the breast milk in the refrigerator. Breast milk may be stored in a refrigerator that is kept at 40 degrees Fahrenheit or below for up to 72 hours from the date it was pumped. The best way to thaw breast milk is to take it out of the freezer and put it in the fridge. You could also run it under warm water, but you never want to thaw breast milk on the counter or in the microwave. Centers and homes are required to offer one type of creditable infant formula. The CDSS CACFP branch requires centers and homes to notify parents or guardians that they offer an iron-fortified infant formula at no cost by either including a notification in a parent handbook, on the enrollment record, on the program operator's website, or another document available to parents, or by obtaining the signature of a parent or guardian who provides an alternate infant formula, acknowledging that they are declining the program operator's infant formula. The CDSS has a sample form that you can use. It is Form CACFP 12, Parent Guardian's Form for Declining a Provider's Infant Formula or Food, and is located in the Download Forms section of the Child Nutrition Information and Payment System, also known as the CNIPS. The USDA also created a form that can be used, which is located in the USDA Feeding Infants Guide. It's called Feeding Your Baby Infant Formula. Let us know. Parents may bring in another type of infant formula as long as it is creditable. Creditable infant formulas. The USDA has issued 3 criteria for centers and homes to review to determine whether a formula is creditable. First, the label must state infant formula with iron or something similar and contain at least 1 milligram of iron per 100 calories. This can be found on the nutrition facts label of the infant formula container. Second, the infant formula cannot be a Food and Drug Administration, also known as FDA, exempt infant formula. These formulas are specialty formulas that are created for infants who have a medical need. We will talk more about exempt infant formulas next. The third criteria is that the formula is regulated by the FDA. All infant formulas sold in the United States are regulated by the FDA and meet minimum standards. If a parent brings you a formula they purchased in another country, it is likely that the formula is not regulated by the FDA and therefore would not be creditable. If the parent is requesting that their child receive an infant formula that was purchased outside of the United States, then the child must have a medical statement form on file, completed and signed by a licensed physician, physician's assistant, or nurse practitioner. Exempt infant formulas can be offered with a medical statement signed by either a licensed physician, a physician's assistant, or a nurse practitioner that indicates the substituted formula. The center or home is required to provide the exempt formula unless it would cause a fundamental alteration of the program. For example, if a small daycare home was having difficulty purchasing a very expensive, specialized formula, causing a major financial hardship that could put them out of business, they would not be required to provide the infant formula. The next section I am going to cover are the documentation requirements for infant meal records, medical statement forms, and parental decline forms. All of the documentation requirements that I will cover are included in the CDSS CACFP Bulletin CACFP 01-2020 Documentation Requirements for the CACFP Meal Patterns. These are the infant meal record requirements for child care centers. Child care centers must document the food items and amounts offered, not consumed, including breast milk and infant formula, by the end of each meal or snack service. Centers must also include the infant's name, age, date of birth, and the date of meal service. Form CACFP 32 Infant Meal Record is a sample form that can be used to document infant meals and is available in the Download Forms section of the CNIPS. These are the infant meal record requirements for daycare homes. Daycare homes must document the food items offered to each infant by the end of each day. They must also include the infant's name, age, date of birth, and date of meal service. Even though the requirement is for the meals to be recorded by the end of the day, it is recommended to complete the meal records at the point of meal service. A parent or guardian can provide their own infant formula or another component for their child. CDSS recommends having parents complete the document CACFP 12 Parent Guardian's Form for declining a provider's infant formula or food. However, this is not required. This form can be accessed in the Download Forms section of the CNIPS. Meals and snacks are still reimbursable as long as the food item or infant formula brought in by the parent or guardian is creditable. Also, parents can only bring in one creditable food component to contribute to a reimbursable meal. For example, if a mom brings in breast milk, that would be the one and only component that she could contribute. When a parent chooses to bring in all food for their infant and decline participation in the CACFP, it is a best practice to have them complete Form CACFP 11, Declining Participation in the CACFP, located in the Download Forms section of the CNIPS. Please note that if a parent brings in all food for their infant, the center or home cannot claim reimbursement for meals and snacks served. A signed medical statement is required to allow the use of specialized, exempt, or low iron infant formulas served to infants, infant formula served to children 13 months and older. Please note that there is flexibility to continue to serve a child infant formula from 12 to 13 months of age to transition them to whole milk. But after that age, a medical statement form would need to be completed to continue offering infant formula. Milk served to infants under 1 year of age, for example, if a parent requested for their child to have cow's milk or soy milk, and substitutions to the infant meal pattern for a food allergy or medical condition that cannot be accommodated within the meal pattern. Medical statements must be signed by either a licensed physician, physician's assistant, or nurse practitioner. The medical statement form CNP 925 is located in the Download Forms section of the CNIPS. For questions about the CACFP infant meal pattern or infant feeding, please contact the CDSS CACFP meal pattern team at cacfpmealpatterns@dss.ca.gov. Thank you for viewing this online training on feeding infants in the CACFP. A list of all the resources discussed in this training are included in the resources document that accompanies this training. This institution is an equal opportunity provider.